So, folks, it's earnings season, right? Q2 earnings have been all over the place so far, but for rideshare companies, early August's reports were an exciting update on the road towards profitability. So, both Uber and Lyft reported positive EBI TDA in Q2. Uber clocked in $364 million, and Lyft posted $79.1 million. This is pretty significant, right? For Lyft, that number represented a 232% year-over-year increase in earnings. For Uber, though, this is its first quarter of positive cash flow ever, right? Raising its earnings by $873 million year over year. Now, historically known for being one of the most highly ranked and highly invested in tech disruptors that also can't seem to turn a profit, this news doesn't quite put Uber in the green just yet. They did report a net loss of $2.6 billion this quarter, and this loss includes stock-based compensation and revaluation of the company's stakes in Aurora, Grab, and Zomato. Same with Lyft, right? They reported a Q2 net loss of $377.2 million. But regardless, this positive cash flow is a milestone for both Uber and Lyft, and yet the company is still facing headwinds from drivers, inflation, other industry disruptors, and a shifting value proposition as the future horizon of AVs inch their way forward. So we're going to hone in on Uber more specifically here and pose the question, how should the rest of the gig economy's main players, rideshare capital investors, and drivers interpret this quarter of positive cash flow? Is this a short-term blip of profit, or is this the beginning of a long-term trend toward bringing Uber and Lyft and other rideshare players out of the red? Well, for insights, we're joined today by Sergio Avedian. He's senior contributor for a leading gig economy publication, the RideShare Guy. He previously had an almost 20-year Wall Street career working in finance, and he currently consults various Wall Street firms on the gig economy. Sergio, welcome. Thanks so much for joining us, man. How you doing?
Good. How are you, Daniel?
Doing very well. Always good getting to chat. Last time we spoke, I sourced you for a story on Uber paying out its drivers in the middle of the most recent gas crisis. And so, folks, I recommend that you go check out that piece for more great insights from Sergio. He's also got a great show called Show Me the Money Club on the RideShare Guy's YouTube channel. So go check that out as well. We're going to be referencing that here in a little bit. So Sergio, let's just jump right in. We're going to start with reactions, right? How did this news of positive cash flow from both Lyft and Uber, how did that news hit you and your team at the RideShare Guy? Was it unexpected, or did it trend with where you were seeing Uber taking its business model in the last quarter?
Yeah, to me personally, it wasn't a surprise, as you correctly stated, that I consult with a couple of Wall Street firms. And I had put out a report about a month before the earnings came out, and pretty much everything I expected happened. So I called it the perfect storm. Perfect storm in a good way for Uber and Lyft, for the rideshare companies in general, but also to a point for gig economy companies such as Doordash and Instacart, which is about to go public by the end of the year. But let's stick to Uber. Uber has a lot more pans on the fire, from rideshare to food delivery, to delivery of everything actually these days, and to trucking. So what I mean the perfect quarter, what it entails is that they were able to lower their costs and charge more. I mean, this is not rocket science. Like in any business, your profit margins depend on being able to charge more and pay less by lowering your costs. Well, what is the largest cost for Uber? The drivers, because they have a low asset business model. They don't own the cars. The drivers are responsible for the maintenance and insurance and buying gas, obviously, for their cars. So they bring their tools to work on a daily basis. So what Uber has to do through their algorithms, they have to manage to charge more to the passenger and pay less to the driver. And that's exactly what happened the last quarter, last 3 months. Now, as you said, their revenues were up 33%. To be perfectly honest, this may be like a one-quarter blip at the moment, because one quarter on Wall Street doesn't make a trend, but they are definitely on the right path. The reason for that is they have all the drivers out there that they need, right? So due to inflation, a lot of people are out there driving again because they're to supplement their W-2 jobs. It's not enough. They're not making enough money. And what easier way to enter the gig economy than Uber and Lyft? So they have plenty of drivers. They solved the driver supply problems that they faced last year. So there is no more shortage of drivers. And when there's no shortage of drivers, Uber is able to control costs more by lowering incentives, because as a rideshare driver also that I am, my incentives have been cut by 60 to 70% from last August and September. So yeah, they had the perfect storm and they were able to charge more and pay less.
One of the factors that played into this quarter of positive cash flow was that consumer bookings, right? Customer bookings, riders, they were up significantly, 33% year over year actually, which signaled that even with inflationary pressure, consumers are still spending on things like rides and travel conveniences, which could have been interpreted as a luxury that was going to get axed. We're not seeing that play out. Was there anything that the company did here specifically, in your view, to motivate this boost in ridership? And if so, are those strategies sustainable? What are your thoughts?
I don't think they did anything new, honestly. They had 122 million monthly active users, which is up. I mean, the growth is still there. It's still a growth company, if you want to call it that. But the growth is going to slow down. I mean, it's going to slow down to single-digit margins this year and then flat next year. But now they have to figure out how to squeeze profit out of 122 million users that they have in the US. So to me, I don't think they did anything specific, really. But at some point, though, if we do go in a recession, right, which a lot of the pundits expect us to be in one, the consumer will start tightening their belts. At some point, there will be, the slowdown in the economy actually helped them with the driver supply. But at some point, it may be a headwind going forward. And, look, we all know, tighten our belts when things are bad. And also you have to understand, I mean, from 2019 pre-pandemic levels, pretty much every single trip is up 50 to 100%. Uber is able to charge 50 to 100% more for the same 10-mile trip that you used to pay $10 for. Now the same trip is $20. So at some point, I'm not saying, I don't know when, but at some point, this may become a luxury. I mean, a lot of people actually left public transportation and then took Ubers and Lyfts when it was the, VC-backed subsidized fantasy land for the passenger. But those things are changing now. The numbers are, the numbers Uber is charging for the same trip from 3 years ago are up astronomically. And we'll see if those headwinds develop. But at the moment, no, they're kicking in all cylinders. The only thing that I'm seeing with my channel checks is that each part of the business is slowing down, and not in demand, not in the frequency orders, but in the size of the orders, just for the fact that, inflation is hurting everybody's pocketbook, right?
So then do you think that we hit a peak of bookings with this kind of 33% year over year growth, right? Is this a revenue stream trend that Uber can rely on moving forward? Or do you imagine we're starting to approach some kind of plateau based on what you're seeing?
Right. Well, I mean, to be perfectly honest, the 33% increase came on the back of a quarter that, rideshare was not back to normal yet, right? The country was not open. So if you compare second quarter this year to second quarter of last year, the country was just about to open up. So the comps that they have going forward is going to get a lot tougher. So this quarter compared to 2021 second quarter, the 33% is appreciable, of course, but that's because the country in August, September of last year was just opening up. So let's see what the comps are going forward. It's going to be tough for comps to compare for the third and the fourth quarters, because by then, by August and all the way through December of last year, the country was wide open and people were starting to go out again and start traveling again. So granted, comps are going to be more difficult to compare, but we'll see. I don't think it's going to be 33%. I'll be very surprised if they're double-digit growth actually going forward quarter over quarter.
So to bring up some other content that you and your team have been doing, the RideShare Guy himself, Harry Campbell, hosted an interview with Uber's CEO recently, and the two of them brought up expenses kind of at large and how they relate with driver earnings. You broke this down on your own show with Chris Gervais called Show Me the Money Club, which I mentioned earlier. Can you summarize for us some of your analysis for how driver earnings and policy around driver rates has impacted Uber's cash flow as of late? Is that having an impact, right, on that first quarter of positive cash flow?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because I mean, the timing of this interview is pretty fantastic because we did the episode yesterday for over 2 hours. We talked about this. Uber finally has figured out how to completely separate what the passenger pays from what the driver receives. With the algorithms that they're running now, they have succeeded in doing so. So that means what? Look, last quarter, Uber did 1.87 billion with a B rides in the US, okay? And, we had the Professor Len Sherman of Columbia Business School on our show a couple of months ago, and he said the same thing. He says, this is not rocket science. You just charge more, pay less. And, again, as a driver, I'm feeling the inflationary pressures. But on the other side, I mean, you have to also think, there is a rising tide lifts all boats is a correct assumption here, just for the fact that, so assume in 2019, you were going to take a 10-mile trip and it was going to cost you $20. And today, that same trip is $30. So assuming Uber's gross take rate of 50%, the driver made $10 in 2019 for that trip. Well, fast forward to today, Uber is charging $30 and assuming the same take rate of 50%. Now the driver is making $15 on the same trip, right? It's the same miles, same distance, same duration. So Uber being able to charge more to the passengers kind of reflects on the drivers making more money as well. So the inflation pressures are lessened a little bit on the driver side, but with the new algorithms that they have, I mean, yesterday I called it boiling a frog slowly, and my analysis is there for everybody to see. I think Uber now can comfortably be profitable on every single ride as opposed to lose money on one and make money on two. The systems that they're running now are brilliant. I call it brilliant. I think it's genius what they're doing right now. So going forward, yeah, I think, they don't need to chase growth any longer. They just need to optimize their systems and machine learning systems to the point that squeeze incremental, additional profit on each single trip going forward.
And you brought this up earlier, right? The sort of VC-funded fantasy land couldn't continue forever. And Uber and Lyft still can't seem to break out of reporting quarterly net losses, which does still force them to rely on at least some amount of a stream of VC funding to stay afloat. So do you expect now with this positive cash flow news that it could actually motivate more investors to flock in and put their money behind the company? And yes or no, basically. And if so, what effect, regardless, could this have on Uber's next moves?
No, the VC funding ended when they went public, Daniel.
That's fair.
I mean, I think when they went public 3 years ago, they did their IPOs. Most of the VCs who had invested in multiple rounds, in the past 5-6 years, they exited anyway. They took their, as we all know, I don't know if you followed the news or not, but in fact, SoftBank, which was the largest VC backer of Uber, exited their whole position because they are having issues on their own with their portfolio in Japan, of course. But no, there is no more VC funding. Now they have institutional shareholders who are asking Uber to show them the money. Because look, profits, actual profits, not EBITDA profits, GAAP profitability, right, is the mother's milk of every corporation. I mean, there is no doubt about it, right? Why don't we not talk about Apple when we talk about Apple, about EBITDA earnings, right? We talk about GAAP earnings, real money. Right. So EBITDA is something that I'm not too friendly with, just for the fact that you can make up the numbers as you go along. So to me, now I think it's time for Uber to really, put it in another gear and show actual profits. And I think they're on their way with this new algorithms that they're running. I think they're on their way. If they give up on the growth chase a little bit and Dara Khosrowshahi, who we interviewed last Friday, said the same thing. We're going for profits now. We're done, with this double-digit growth scenarios, and we need to make money, and we need to show the money to our institutional investors who've been holding the stock patiently for 2-3 years now without any profits.
All right, Sergio, last question for you. But what should we make of this then? How should we move forward, right? Should the industry view this as a short-term blip of positive cash flow, or is this indicative of the beginning of a consistently reliable and growing flow of cash to eventually reach profitability, right? Where does, things just in general stand, and where do we move forward?
Well, again, as I said previously, one quarter doesn't make a trend. However, if the economy slows down, they're going to face their own headwinds, right? So the slowing economies actually help them with the driver supply. So they remove that from their equation altogether. They don't have to spend more money on incentives to attract drivers, older drivers or new drivers into their system. What they have to do now is that they have to watch really close what the effect is on demand, actually, because at the moment, demand is exactly matching, if not surpassing, the pre-pandemic levels. So it took about 3 years for the rideshare demand to come back. However, on Uber side, during the pandemic, they benefited tremendously from Uber Eats, right? Because that was a dying, fledgling business. And when the lockdowns took place, that business took off. So that became, second place in the globe behind Doordash when it comes to delivery. So now, if that slows down due to the higher inflation and people, tighten their belts a little bit, that may suffer a little bit. And also, we will have to wait and see what the effect of higher prices on these trips is going to be as far as the rideshare part of the business is concerned. So I think they have finally figured out a formula that could take them to profitability if the headwinds that they're going to face due to the slowing economy doesn't hurt them that much. So to me, it still remains to be seen. I think what they have done with these algorithms in the last 3 months or so is brilliant. Whoever came up with it, congratulations. You finally have figured out how to separate what the driver receives from what the passenger pays.
All right, Sergio, thank you so much for your perspectives today. This has been very insightful. And like you said, one quarter does not make a trend. So we will have to stay tuned at least through the rest of the year to see how a few more quarterly earnings reflect this hopefully profitable trend for Uber. But we could see, like you said, if Larry Summers gets his wish and we reach 10% unemployment, or if the Fed continues to hike inflation, or continues to hike interest rates, then we could see Uber face a consumer base that doesn't see this as a needed convenience anymore, and that could in turn lead to some challenges. So there's a lot at the macro level that's still going to shape things out. But for now, we'll go ahead and wrap things up. Sergio Avedian, senior contributor for leading gig economy publication, The RideShare Guy. Thank you so much for your time. And folks, I encourage you to go check out The RideShare Guy online, but then also their YouTube channel where you can find Sergio's show, Show Me the Money Club. Sergio, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Daniel. I appreciate it.